going to bring you some writings of someone who's been a tremendous influence on my life, and that's the poet David White. But I'm not going to read poetry today because he wrote a wonderful book called Consolations: The Solace, Nourishment, and Underlying Meaning of Everyday Words. Um, and on a few notes from the back of books, these are all his poetry books. But this is the first one that I know of that is really prose, or very poetic prose. One critic says, "We think we know what we were talking about, the meaning of things, the basic rules of language, until we read David White's Consolations, where we are forced to reassess of everything and begin again." Another person said, "Consolations remains one of the most luminous books I've ever encountered. It's an absolutely magnificent read, the kind that reorients your world and remains a compass for a lifetime." And the last quote, "A word can know you better than you know yourself. And I did not fully understand this until I read Consolations. It's an immensely powerful book. It is an extraordinary book." And see if there. Another person says, "Beautiful, elegant, tiny essays on the consoling power of words." I think White is as much a mystic as an author, and this book proves it. Beautiful, soulful, thoughtful. So, he has a book of words in alphabetical order. I'm just going to start by reading some of them. Don't know how far I'll get. So, under A, he has a little reading about anger. And he says, "Anger is the deepest form of care for another, for the world, for the self, for a life, for the body, for a family, and for all our ideals, all vulnerable and all possibly always about to be hurt. Stripped of physical imprisonment and vilest reaction, anger points toward the purest form of compassion. The internal living flame of anger always illuminates what we belong to, what we wish to protect, and those things for which we are willing to hazard and even imperil ourselves. What we usually call anger is only what is left of its essence when we are overwhelmed by its accompanying vulnerability, when it reaches the lost surface of our mind or our body's incapacity to hold it, or when it touches the limits of our understanding. What we name as anger is actually the only incoherent physical incapacity to sustain this deep form of care in our outer life. Our anger breaks to the surface most often through our feeling that there's something profoundly wrong with this powerlessness and vulnerability. Anger, too, often finds its voice strangely, though through our incoherence and through our inability to speak. But anger in its pure state is the measure of the way we are implicated in the world and made vulnerable through love in all its specifics. A daughter, a house, a family, and enterprise. Anger turns to violence and violent speech when the mind refuses to countenance the vulnerability of the body in its love for all those outer things. But anger truly felt at its center is the essential living flame of being fully alive and fully here. It is a quality to be followed to its source, to be prized, to be tended, and an invitation to finding a way to bring that source fully into the world through making the mind clearer and more generous, the heart more compassionate, the body larger and strong enough to hold it. Now, his take on beauty. Beauty is the harvest of presence, the evanescent moment of seeing or hearing on the outside what already lives far inside us. The eyes, the ears, or the imagination suddenly become a bridge between the here and the there, between then and now, between inside and outside. Beauty is the conversation between what we think is happening outside in the world and what is just about to occur far inside us. Beauty is an achieved state of both deep attention and self-forgetting. The self-forgetting of seeing, hearing, smelling, or touching that erases our separation, our distance, our fear of the other. Beauty invites us through entrancement to that fearful frontier be what we think makes us and what we think makes the world. Beauty is almost found in symmetries and intriguing asymmetries. The symmetries and asymmetries seen out in creation, the wings of the moth, the airy sky and solid earth, the restful, focused eyes of a loving face in which we see our own self reflected. The symmetry also, therefore, of bringing together inner and outer recognitions. Beauty is an inner and an outer complexion living in one face. Beauty especially occurs in the meeting of time with the timeless, the passing moment framed by what has happened and what is about to occur, the scattering of the first spring apple blossoms, the turning, spiraling flight of a curled leaf in the falling light, the smoothing of white, sun-filled sheets by careful hands setting them to air on a line, the broad expanse of cotton filled by the breeze only for a moment, the sheets sailing on into dryness, billowing toward a future that is always beckoning, just behind us, beyond us. Beauty is the harvest of presence. This one is called close. Close is what we almost always are. Close to happiness, close to another, close to leaving, close to tears, close to God, close to losing faith, close to being done, close to saying something, or close to success, and even with the greatest sense of satisfaction, close to giving the whole thing up. Our human essence lies not in arrival, but in being almost there. We are creatures who are on the way. Our journey, a series of impending, anticipated arrivals. We live by unconsciously measuring the inverse distances of our own proximity, an intimacy calibrated by the vulnerability we feel in giving up our sense of separation. To consciously become close is a courageous form of unilateral disarmament, a chancing of our arm and our love, a willingness to hazard our affections, and an unconscious declaration that we might be equal to the inevitable loss that the vulnerability of being close will bring. Human beings do not find their essence through fulfillment or eventual arrival, but by staying close to the way they like to travel, to the way they hold the conversation between the ground on which they stand and the horizon to which they go. We are, in effect, always close to the ultimate secret, that we are more real in our simple wish to find a way than any destination we could reach. The step between not understanding that and understanding that is as close as we get to happiness. And another C word, so courage. Courage is a word that tempts us to think outwardly, to run bravely against opposing fire, to do something under besieging circumstances, and perhaps above all, to be seen to do it in public, to show courage, to be celebrated in story, rewarded with medals, given the accolade. But a look at its linguistic origins is to look in a more interior direction and toward its original Old Norman French, cœur, or heart. Courage is the measure of our heartfelt participation with life, with another, with a community, a work, a future. To be courageous is not necessarily to go anywhere or do anything except to make conscious those things we already feel deeply, and then to live through the unending vulnerabilities of those consequences. To be courage is to seat our feelings deeply in the body and in the world, to live up to and into the necessities of relationships that already often exist with things we find we already deeply care about, with a person, with a future, a possibility in society, or with an unknown that begs us on and always has begged us on. To be courageous is to stay close to the way we are made. Okay, ready for a D? Disappointment. Disappointment is inescapable but necessary. A misunderstood mercy, and when it's approached properly, an agent for transformation and the hidden underground engine of trust and generosity in the human life. The attempt to create a life devoid of disappointment is the attempt to avoid the vulnerabilities that make the conversation of life real, moving, and lifelike. It is the attempt to avoid our own necessary and merciful heartbreak. To be disappointed is to reassess ourself and our inner world, and to be called to the larger foundational reality that lies beyond any false self we had only projected onto the outer world. What about forgiveness? Forgiveness is a skill, a way of preserving clarity, sanity, and generosity in an individual life. It's a beautiful question and a way of shaping the mind to a future we want for ourselves. An admittance that if forgiveness comes through understanding, and if understanding is just a matter of time and application, then we might as well begin forgiving right at the beginning of any drama, rather than put ourselves through the full cycle of festering, incapacitation, reluctant healing, and eventual blessing. To forgive is to put oneself in a larger gravitational field of experience than the one that first seemed to hurt us. We reimagine ourselves in the light of our maturity, and we reimagine the past in the light of our new identity. We allow ourselves to be gifted by a story larger than the story that first hurt us and left us bereft. The great mercy is that the sincere act of trying to forgive, even if it is not entirely successful, is a form of blessing and forgiveness itself. At the end of life, the wish to be forgiven is ultimately the chief desire of almost every human being. In refusing to wait, in extending forgiveness to others now, we begin the long journey of becoming the person who will be large enough, able enough, and generous enough to receive, at the very end, that absolution ourselves. How are we doing? Okay. This is on friendship. Friendship is a mirror to presence and a testament to forgiveness. Friendship not only helps us see ourselves through another's eyes, but can be sustained over the years only with someone who has repeatedly forgiven us for our trespasses, as we must find it in ourselves to forgive them in turn. A friend knows our difficulties and shadows and remains in sight, a companion to our vulnerabilities more than our triumphs, when we are under the strange illusion that we do not need them. An undercurrent of real friendship is a blessing exactly because its elemental form is rediscovered again and again through understanding and mercy. All friendships of any length are based on a continued mutual forgiveness. Without tolerance and mercy, all friendships die. In the course of the years, a close friendship will always reveal the shadow in the other as much as ourselves. To remain friends, we must know the other and their difficulties and even their sins, and encourage the best in them, not through critique, but through addressing the better part of them, the leading creative edge of their incarnation. Thus, subtly discourage what makes them smaller, less generous, less of themselves. Oh, there's so much. Friendship transcends disappearance, and enduring friendship goes on after death. The exchange only transmuted by absence, the relationship advancing and maturing in a silent, internal, conversational way, even after one half of the bond has passed on. But no matter the medicinal values of being a true friend or sustaining a long, close relationship with another, the ultimate touchstone of friendship is not improvement, neither of the other or of the self. The ultimate touchstone is witness, the privilege of having been seen by someone, and the equal privilege of being granted the sight of the essence of another, to have walked with them and to have believed in them, and sometimes just to have accompanied them for a brief span on a journey impossible to accomplish alone. Hmm? Well, how about gratitude? Gratitude is not a passive response to something that we have been given. Gratitude arises from paying attention, from being awake in the presence of everything that lives within and without us. Gratitude is not necessarily something that is shown after the event. It is the deep, a priori state of attention that shows we understand and are equal to the gifted nature of life. Gratitude is the understanding that many millions of things come together and live together and mesh together and breathe together in order for us to take even one more breath of air. That the underlying gift of life and incarnation as a living, participating human being is a privilege. That we are miraculously part of something rather than nothing. Even if that something is temporarily pain or despair, we inhabit a living world with real faces, real voices, laughter, the color blue, the green of the fields, the freshness of a cold wind, or the tawny hue of a winter landscape. To see the full miraculous essentiality of the color blue is to be grateful with no necessity for a word of thanks. To see fully the beauty of a daughter's face is to be fully grateful without having to seek a God to thank. To sit among friends and strangers, hearing many voices, strange opinions, to intuit inner lives beneath surface lives, to inhabit many worlds at once in this world, to be a someone amongst all other someones, and therefore to make a conversation without saying a word is to deepen our sense of presence and then our natural sense of thankfulness that everything happens both with us and without us, that we are participant and witness all at once. Thankfulness finds its full measure in generosity of presence, both through participation and witness. We sit at the table as part of every other person's world while making our own world without will or effort. This is what is extraordinary and gifted. This is the essence of gratefulness, seeing to the heart of privilege. Thanksgiving happens when our sense of presence meets all other presences. Being unappreciative might mean we are simply not paying attention. How am I doing? 5 minutes. Okay. Heartbreak, help, hearting, let's see. Heartbreak is unpreventable. The natural outcome of caring for people and things over which we have no control, of holding in our affections those who are inevitably to move beyond our line of sight. Even the longest marriage has had its heart broken many times just in the many acts of staying together. Heartbreak begins the moment we are asked to let go, but cannot. In other words, it colors and inhabits and magnifies each and every day. Heartbreak is not a visitation, but a path that human beings follow through even the most average life. Heartbreak is an indication of our sincerity in a love relationship, in a life's work, in trying to learn a musical instrument, in the attempt to shape a better, more generous self. Heartbreak is the beautifully helpless side of love and affection, and is just as much an essence, an emblem of care, as a spiritual athlete's quick but abstract ability to let go. Heartbreak is how we mature. Yet we use the word heartbreak as if it only occurs when things have gone wrong. Heartbreak may be the very essence of being human, of being on the journey from here to there, and of coming to care deeply for what we find along the way. Go right to love. Okay. What? Oh, yeah. And this is from his second book, yet to come out, but from Consolations 2. Love is an impossible world. We should never try to write about it. Love is an essence we keep as close as a close secret, even from ourselves. Love is the unrecognized invitation in every relationship, romantic, collegiate, and even the central spark that ignites a deadly fight between sworn enemies. Love is the destination for which we are unconsciously packed and ready to go. But love is the place that is always disguised as somewhere else. Love takes us deeper while subverting what we imagined deeper meant. Love beckons to begin with and then always frightens. Love seems to push us away, but the step toward love or the step away from love is always the choice we make when we feel we are making no choice at all. Love is a form of unilateral disarmament, an instinctual willingness for vulnerability that overwhelms our surface defenses and at the same time rids us in a frightening way of the need for defenses at all. Love is frightening exactly because it overwhelms and disarms us, takes us apart, and strangely simplifies us into something more real, more grounded, more generous, and something simply unrecognizable. Love is what we feel deeply but can never name in our sudden radical simplification. Love's job is simply to rename us and then, in turn, to rename and define every part of our lives, eliminating or downsizing all previous priorities, turning our world and ourselves inside out and our outside in. Love is contagious and always leads to other forms of love. Love awaits us outside us, calling us on, but love is already there, inside us, calling us inward to some other foundation that is no foundation at all, but some elemental flow, some inner correspondence seeking some equally moving, inviting symmetry in the world, the glimpse of a face or the sound of a voice calling us out. The curved back of a violin asks us to lift the instrument for the first time and play even when we can't. that grateful look in the eyes of someone we have helped through our work, confirming our love for the work itself. It goes on. Love is the very atmosphere in which we breathe and from which we make a meaningful life, or even, to our continued astonishment, a meaningful work. And in the end, no matter any difficult symptoms we exhibit, love seems to be the one